Well, here we are. The Dalzell Estate, Motherwell's best kept secret. It's hard to believe we're 5 minutes away from Fir Park. If you can be here in person, allow my voice to guide you and allow your phone to be a visual navigator of sorts, a map to ensure you're on the right path. If you can't be here in person, maybe the weather's just too miserable, or maybe you live miles and miles away, then I ask you enjoy this walk virtually. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this journey from the comfort of your own home. I like to start my walks around here in front of the house. The oldest part of the house is right in the middle, dates back to the 1600s. The rest of the house grew with its history as the place was extended and added to throughout the centuries. This place has seen a lot of changes over the years. It was turned into a military hospital during the First World War, a boys' school until the late 1960s, and then it was left in a semi-abandoned state until, out of nowhere, it was turned into luxury apartments in the 1980s.
I went to school along the road at Our Lady's High, and the very first memories I do have actually were from an English teacher that I had at school in first year, and I think I had her in second year as well. She was called Miss Hoy. Old school, she wore a black gown, and she actually arranged a wee school visit or class visit to the house. She knew the caretaker who worked here, and at that point the building was all boarded up and it had been empty for a number of years, and she arranged a wee after school visit, and the caretaker took us round, and the place was in complete rack and ruin, and then it was quite badly vandalised. So that was my very first visit to inside Dalzell House when I was about 12, 13, and it blew my mind. And I can remember at the time thinking it wouldn't be great if they could make this into houses again for people to live in. So in 2016, sure enough, a flat came up for sale after it was redeveloped in the late 1980s, and my husband and I moved here, and we've been living here for 5 years. Even though you buy a property in the building, you've only really got a wee loan of it, and you're always aware all the time it's got to be there for the next person that comes along. So I see yourself, it sounds a bit pretentious, but I think we're kind of just custodians. So though we own it at the moment, we're just custodians, and we're passing it on to the next people.
One of the only things that has remained the same in this house's lifetime is the Covenanter's Oak, which is just down the road. Let's go have a look. This tree is over 800 years old. When it was middle-aged, in the reign of Charles II, the Reverend Lauder, one of many persecuted Presbyterian ministers, preached under its shade to as many as 400 Covenanters, all of whom risked their lives to practice their faith. You can see that today they're doing everything they can to keep it alive just that wee bit longer. Supports on its branches like an old man holding on to his cane.
When I was a boy, Dalzell Estate used to have park rangers, just basically to keep an eye on the park itself. just to make sure that no one was damaging the Covenanters Oak, nobody was messing about with the house, nobody was damaging the Japanese garden. Without realising what the Covenanters Oak was, myself and a couple of friends climbed up to the top of the Covenanters Oak and were quite happily bouncing about in it and whatever. And, the park rangers come along and chased us away from it. And we were like, no, I have no idea, we're just playing in a tree, without having an absolute clue that this was the Covenanters Oak.
Let's keep going.
Dog Paddy was a lurcher, and sadly we lost him, right? We had Paddy this day with Prince, and it was just after Christmas, so it was between Christmas and New Year, and somebody from the big house must have put a turkey outside because they couldn't eat it. It was too much. Did he not find this full cooked turkey? And the next thing he run out of the bushes, and the turkey's in his mouth, the head on the one side and its rear end at the other, and all you could hear was crunch, crunch, crunch. They went away and ate it, and he totally obliterated the whole thing. It was about a 12-pound turkey. Hilarious.
We're turning to this path on our left. Look at this tree, the one on your right, where the trunk splits into three. It looks a bit like a cactus, doesn't it?
It's in cactus. But this is my favourite tree in the whole world, this particular tree. You can see that it's had all the bits cut off it, and that is basically to stop people from climbing it. So when I was younger, I used to be able to climb right the way up to the top of that tree. And basically, you can see at the top how all the branches kind of stick out. That's how they came all the way down. So you used to be able to climb that right the way up to the very top. So I would quite happily go and sit up the top of that tree and sit there for an hour or so and watch the world go by. Absolutely love this old tree, a Delta. So it's my favourite tree in the whole world.
We're going down this right hand path, the one behind the cactus tree.
This little carved bench just by the Witch's Circle was in memory of Jerry Lewis, as it says in the back, who was a volunteer down here. I've never met him, but I've heard good things about him. But he worked down here, pruned all the trees, picked up all the litter for years and years and years and years. And when he died, this memorial chair was put in to remember him. Volunteer who, in his later stages of life, decided to dedicate it to Dalzell Estate, essentially.
The formation of these U's has a perfectly innocent explanation. Contrary to its sinister appearance, it was not the site where the Hamiltons conducted some sort of satanic ritual. Rather, this was called the U House, and a large tree in the middle once made its roof. It allowed visitors of the estate a place to admire the views and to let their minds wander. Now, even the middle tree stump is gone, and in more recent years, this area has been known to locals as the Witches' Circle, with rumours of witchcraft being performed underneath its branches.
So it's just like a circle of trees with a tree stump in the middle. And the myth is, if you run round it 10 times and hold the stump, then something bad will happen. My pal done it and then broke his leg, so that's why we believed it.
There's 2 more trees round the corner I want to show you. Just to your left, there's a small pathway. That's our turn here. Be careful crossing the bridge. It's quite narrow and there's only railing on one side. Stop here. Look at the tree to your right, the one with the branches that seem to grow downwards, as if it's impaling itself into the ground.
Yeah, so these yew trees are very highly toxic. They're grown quite a lot in the graveyard. You see them down at the kirk. They kept wildlife out because they were very poisonous. The Latin name is Taxus baccata, which is basically a toxic tree. So the ancient Druids, when there was a death in those times, it was believed that by planting yew trees on top of the dead, the roots would grow through the eyes and the mouth of the dead and stop any sort of resurrection happening. But the person would also live immortal within the tree itself.
Just to your left is the other tree I wanted to show. The one that towers over all the others.
These an American redwood, or a sequoia, first imported to the UK round about, it's debated, right, so it's round about 1853, and then somebody else laid claim that they imported it in 1855. So for argument's sake, I'm going to say 1854. But these are originally in sort of California area. It's a very spongy bark, known as, they're nicknamed the punch tree because you can whack them and it doesn't really hurt, because they hold so much moisture. They look out of place. They are big, big trees, and they're in pretty much most ornamental gardens around North Lanarkshire. All big mansion estates, and they're all basically based. They're just showing off their wealth here, and it always amazes me because not many of them are older than 1855, so it's about 150 years growth. Whoever planted that doesn't get to see its full size. Which is it's just one of the most unselfish things you can do is plant trees, because you'll never see them when they're fully grown.
Let's keep moving. We're turning left here. Keep going left. Follow the path all the way around. Ignore those stairs, just keep following this path.
Yeah, I grew up south side of Glasgow near Port Park. That was my sort of childhood playground, so when we moved here, I discovered this place. It reminds me of that. It's got a sense of sort of calm to it, even when the place is busy. It always seems really calm. The lighting's amazing, the way the sun dapples through all the trees, and always hear the stream just about wherever you are in the estate. Places normally are alike with the bird song and stuff like that, so it's just a place that you can't believe how close it is to Motherwell until you see some of the mess that the folk from Motherwell leave. But no, it's quite a magical place. It's quite, and it seems quite ancient as well, because I think the age of some of the trees, and it's just one of my favourite places. I love it. I come here every day, just about, and 9 times out of 10 I'll see something different that I didn't see the day before. Before lockdown, I could walk here and I'd be unlucky if I saw 1 or 2 other dog walkers or an occasional jogger. Now, if we were to come here in an afternoon on a day like this, it would be like Sauchiehall Street. It would be really busy, especially when we couldn't travel. People started to explore more of their local community and find out just exactly what's on their doorstep. There's even people within the litter picking group who've lived here all their life who didn't know about this place, didn't even know the estate was here, never mind where some of the bits are, didn't even know about the estate. So definitely I think lockdown has made people appreciate more what's on their doorstep.
I think it was possibly maybe about 12 months, 18 months ago, I was walking down. I was talking to somebody that had lived in the Muirhouse area in one of the estates for maybe 10, 15 years. And I spoke to them and they said it was the first time they'd ever walked down the Clyde Road, down to the Barnes Hall. And I found that unbelievable. You know, it's a strange one for me, because it's, for me, one of the most beautiful areas in Lanarkshire. Obviously, Muirhouse is an area that's like the high-rise flats, and you've got Forgewood and Leaving Street and areas round about Motherwell that people think are rough areas, but a lot of good people. And the Clyde and the Barons Hall, or whatever people want to call it, is an area that you can go down and it takes you away from the kind of scheme life and what people portray as rough areas. Aye, I've loved it. I've grew up in it. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. The last few years I've been down, probably not as nice because of the litter and aye, beautiful area, love it.
I used to live not far from there, and at that point in time, I was a single parent with a young teenage daughter, and I got 2 dogs, right? Prince and Paddy, basically. Now, we lived in a flat as well. Not a lot of money, single parent. I was out working full time, so let's say times were tough a lot of the time. Going into the DL estate for me was like going into a cocoon with my 2 dogs, and I cannot tell you how that helped my mental health and well-being. It gave me the ability to maybe leave my problems behind and then pick them up when I come out the gate. I did that route for about 5 years. So it's imprinted on my brain, if you like. if I died and there was my ashes, I'd want my ashes buried there. That's how much that place means to me.
We're going up this flight of stairs to that platform above us with the pillars. It's called Lord Gavin's Temple, and who knows, maybe Lord Gavin will be waiting for us.
So this area here, it used to freak me out when I was a wee boy. I literally used to go running past here. I literally run past the cemetery as well. I was absolutely petrified of it. I was actually petrified of this area, thinking that the ghost of the Duke was sitting here watching me going past whilst he was sitting there watching his wife's grave.
On Wednesday, the 3rd of May, 1933, Lady Sybil Hamilton died from a sudden illness. Lord Gavin Hamilton built this place to overlook his wife's grave. I wonder, while he stood here mourning, if he ever compared his fate to that of his late father, who also outlived his wife, Lord Gavin's mother, and the former Lady Hamilton, by several years. History repeats itself, I suppose. It reminds me of the ancient Greek tale of Orpheus and Eurydice, when Orpheus travels to the underworld to get his love back, and as he turns to look upon her, Eurydice becomes stuck in the land of the dead. Only here, the one trapped was Lord Gavin, trapped in his own grief as he looked upon that grave every day. Now, from here, the same place that reminded Lord Gavin that death had done them apart, we can now see that death has once more brought them together. Let's start walking back down the steps. Once you get to the end of the stairs, turn right and keep following the path we were on before. This is where the Japanese gardens used to be. It was a Dutch garden for a time, and then they were going to turn it into a formal garden again in the 2000s, but for some reason they never did. To your right is St. Patrick's Well. We don't know how old it actually is, but it's ancient. The water was said to have healing powers. If you tried to cross the soggy ground now, you wouldn't even find enough water to clean the dirt off your boots.
My grandmother, she didn't come from Motherwell originally, and she came here to work and married my great-grandfather, Henry Rood. She says, Lady Hamilton used to walk by this bridge, wherever the bridge is, and she used to drop her knickers so that the workmen would see her. Well, she says she saw it, so I don't know. I really don't know. I was even surprised she told me because she was one of these kind of stuck up ladies, do you know what I mean? Christ, that's Miss Lady Hamilton at that time. What year that would be, I've no idea.
In between these trees, in front of the graveyard wall, you'll see 4 small stones. These are the graves of the Hamilton family dogs, Shot, Peggy, Avon and Colma. Let's get a closer look.
Doing my family's research and to see how they lived compared to how the people in the big house lived really annoyed me. And then I wrote another poem about the White Walk and the dog cemetery and all the rest, how they thought more of the dogs than they did of my family.
Round the corner and up a wee bit, Lord Hamilton's dogs in the rainweed pit. Pride o' place these dogs were gien, mattering mair than my kin I'm seeing. Lord and ladies, wha graced the land, always having the upper hand.
Follow me round this corner on your right hand side and we'll make our way into the graveyard. During the cholera epidemic, many people died at terrifying speed. People that were seemingly well in the morning would end up dead and buried before the next sunrise. It is said that some people were buried so quickly that they weren't even dead yet, as years after they were laid to rest, some of the graves were reopened. It was rumoured that their bodies were found facing downwards.
My family's lived here for at least to 1740, that's as far back as I can feasibly trace. We were weavers, they worked 17 hours a day, the women smoked their pipes and drank their whisky along with the men, so they had a real hard life. Other ancestors of mine, one was a runner, one was, a tailor, so they kind of progressed up the social scale a bit after that. So they were all diversified, and a lot of them are buried down St Patrick's Cemetery.
Here we are at the cemetery gates. There's some people I'd like you to meet. The ground here is so sandy and dry, the life of a corpse was given to be only 5 years.
Looking back in time and space, remembering kinfolk in this place, lying in graves sae cold and sere, for all eternity and mair. Shut your ee and you can see ancestor spirits flying free.
We're going to walk straight ahead until the wall on our left hand side turns a corner. In this wee corner, there are the graves of James and Robert Prentice and their families. A father and son who for nearly 70 years between them dug graves here. During the time of the resurrectionists, the Prentice were armed with guns and they kept watch over this place at dark. You can imagine them hiding in this corner, much as their graves do now, out of eyesight from the entrance, to catch a grave robber in the act. We will walk past the mausoleum and turn right. There's another grave here that's in place where the dead would have once stood. In the gaps in the wall here, children used to dare each other to put their hands through, hoping nothing on the other side tried to drag them in. The grave with the cloth-covered urn above it is the final resting place of the Reverend James Classen. Although he was only 15 when the church here was replaced with Sevdiel Parish, his gravestone is believed to mark the spot of the old pulpit from St Patrick's. After all these years, this place still has its watchman and a priest. Even the kirk's old brick was used for the Hamilton mausoleum. Other than those bricks, The only thing that remains from the old church is the baptismal font, which may date back to the 12th century. It can be found at South Dalzell parish, but it was gifted by John Hamilton. Before it was donated, this piece of great antiquity was used as a pig trough. We're going to walk up to that big tree at the back of the graveyard, and then back down near the left-hand side wall. This tree is completely hollow. It has one hole near the bottom and one hole near the top. Find a ball small enough, you could have the most gothic game of basketball in your life, as well as its possible usage as a spooky basketball hoop. I always found this tree's placement within this graveyard very fitting. The nails on its trunk could be an indicator that somebody tried to weaken its structure. The idea was that the rusted steel of the nail would weaken the tree. And despite it being hollowed out, it still stands. Similar to the memory of the people in these graves, much of it is hollow, empty, bare, and yet a small part of these people's lives still persists. If you now roughly follow the graveyard wall on your left hand side, you'll see a grave that sticks out like a sore thumb because of how new it is. It's a replacement war grave of a W. Bailey. It's still visited every year on Remembrance Sunday. In front of it is a far less immaculate grave belonging to a John Williamson, 1785.
There's a lot of stone just kind of back right of the, as you come in the gate of the graveyard. And there's a lot of stone down in the corner somewhere. It's quite simply on it just says on it 1785 John Williamson. And the first time I ever noticed it, good for a year ago now, like, but the first time I ever spotted it, it stood out to me. I'm looking at one now that's 1843, erected by John Gourlay, Elizabeth Allen, intended burying place of them and their family. And there's a lot of history about them, family members, when they died, how old they were, what family members they left behind. And then you just get this one here, it just says 1785 John Williamson. No other details whatsoever. Doesn't look as if anything's been carved into it, because the name and the year is quite prominent. It's off-centred to the rest of the stone. And it just generally seems like nobody gives a shit about that guy when he died. It just seems like a rushed job, quick stone in the ground, see you later on. Left no one behind.
Let's leave the dead to their rest now, and we'll start making our way towards the gates. This grave has weird markings, phantom handprints being dragged down. I can't help but look at those markings and remember the legend of those who are supposedly buried alive. Let's turn right and walk up the White Walk. Be careful of the odd car driving past.
I quite like old graveyards in general. I always find it really fascinating. It's quite sad and poignant as well, but, you know, families where children have died from cholera and typhoid. These diseases are now in our lifetime and the whole disappeared from our country. And I know they're prevalent in other countries still, but it's quite interesting to think it's only a few generations back that families could be wiped out. So I find that quite interesting and poignant, and it's a nice wee reminder of how lucky we are. But generally I think old graveyards are really, really interesting and peaceful places. I'm not spooked in them. I quite enjoy a wee graveyard walk. The biggest problem is it's completely overgrown at the moment and vandalised. But yes, I've heard that in the not so olden days people used to come down and there was a bit of devil worshipping going on. But I don't think today's vandals are doing much of that. I think they're more likely to be daubing the place with their menchies and throwing their rubbish around.
Unfortunately, my inbox is full of people who are unhappy about it being used by young people at the moment. So there's a lot of littering, a lot of broken bottles, a lot of just it not being up kept very well. I think the Barnes Hawk end of it that was taken over by that SPB is a fantastic asset to the area as well. I think that SPB did an amazing amount of work in terms of ecology and looking after the wildlife down there, as well as, you know, working very well with the farm that's down there and the animals, the domestic animals that are down there as well. So I think, again, it's a really good opportunity for young people to learn about the environment and the history and ecology down there and climate change, because, you know, we know the impact that's having already in this area and our waterways and things. So there's lots of opportunity there for it to be used more widely by the local community, I would say. But I think some antisocial issues are a hard nut to crack in this area.
I would unfortunately say one of the biggest challenges we have is antisocial behaviour. Because when we try to put in structures to either manage or inform people about the area, quite often they get damaged or destroyed reasonably quickly, and it's working out how to do that kind of work without those impacts. So that's a major challenge, as well as this land being beside a big fast-flowing river which is changing its course, and with climate change we're getting increased flooding events and increased erosion as well, which is impacting upon the access routes and some of the features, both habitat features and historic features as well. So that's sort of the main challenges.
The Hamiltons did do some generous things in their time. For wealthy landowners, they were charitable. They donated the Duchess of Hamilton Park to the public. Lady Sybil was very passionate in helping the soldiers of the First World War. Archibald Hamilton was a supporter of Robert Owen, even starting a short-lived socialist community at Orbiston. But at the end of the day, they were aristocracy, and any act of goodwill or charity was like chicken found binned outside the house by Paddy the dog, scraps off a plate. These two big walls on either side of us, like a tunnel with no roof. Back in the day, they were painted white, hence the name White Walk. To me, this shows how they viewed, or rather, rarely viewed, the people of Motherwell. In 1891, Lord John Hamilton closed part of a public road that went through his orchards, arguing that it infringed on his estate's privacy. The resulting dispute over the barricaded road was defended by the laird and his employees, some armed with agricultural equipment, some on horseback. As soon as they saw the size of the protest against the road closure, they quickly decided against this courageous display and retreated. The road we are walking through now is the compromise of that almost violent day. A road which was dug under the estate so people like us didn't spoil their view.
Well, how things changed and give it 100 years time and they mean nothing now. You know what I mean? They're there. So progress has put them out the road and the peasants have grew up and became the bosses, if you want to call it that. It's turned a full circle. They were downtrodden at the time, in my opinion. Obviously, they're nobody alive to ask, but they've had to work hard, really hard. And now that the Hamiltons who were lorded over everybody are no longer there, they ruled everything and then they get done away with and everybody else get the land. Social justice, in my opinion.
Let's now do what our forebears could never do freely and turn right back into the estate.
The Dalzell Estate was purchased by Motherwell District Council, which meant that although they didn't really do much with it, to be honest, at the time, they did sell it on, and although it's converted into properties now and they're privately owned, it's maintaining the building for the future, if you like. Personally, my own view is that I think they could have done something like they did with Shatler Road, but obviously the local authority at that point chose not to do that and to sell it on as an asset with preservation in place. It is a listed building, so a lot of the planning regulations should protect that going forward in the future. If it hadn't happened, I'm not sure the building would still be there. I think it would be like Ambient and Priory and may have been neglected even more. And what we don't want is these to end up in disrepair and unable to be used. We've lost a lot of these buildings. I think it's really important that those that remain are understood and have a position in history for young people and for people going forward in the area.
If it hadn't been done up for flats, it would have been demolished. It's as simple as that. So I'm quite happy that it's getting used and preserved. Although obviously it's not preserved for the public to use as such, because it's people's homes. But at least the building's still there and it's protected it. No, there's one up it. It's called Ambient, and it's going to ruin. And it's just a pity somebody couldn't have did something with that. But it's like that today. That people don't seem to care about. I'd preferred it was a museum, but it's so bad. If it's still there, it's still there. People can go and look at it and see it. Do you know what I mean?
I find it quite heartbreaking, for example, that Ambient and Priory along the Clyde and up a wee bit is in rack and ruin, and I think that's really sad that buildings are allowed to become like that. I appreciate it's a lot of money to look after buildings, but I suspect if more people knew more about the buildings in their area, they might want to invest a wee bit of time and effort to maybe campaign to try and get some of these buildings restored and looked after.
We're going to keep walking forwards. Stay on the path we're on now.
It's the fact that you've got really interesting wildlife and habitats right next to kind of a major city or major town at least, and certainly one of the most populated areas of Scotland. You've got Motherwell tall blocks raising up behind you. It's that juxtaposition of this seemingly wild area but in a very human landscape.
It's all the birds, it's all that wildlife that's at your fingertips. It's just an amazing area. One of the kind of reasons I loved that area was because see the swallows that dive down but don't touch the ground and they grab the insects. Springtime, right, believe you me, absolutely stunning sight. And they would all come down, and almost black, because there's that many of them, and come right down. Prince used to chase them.
We're going to turn right and stand at the top of these stairs. This is the Japanese Gardens. Originally placed near St Patrick's Well, it was moved here by Lady Sybil Hamilton. These steps are based off of ones from a temple in Nagasaki, Japan. There was a small temple where we're standing. It's a shame it's gone. I do like the Torii Gate though, even though it's quite badly graffitied. These benches have been tagged too. There's so many people that appreciate this place. You've heard that throughout our journey. Unfortunately, you can see that appreciation is not universal. We will start walking down these stairs. From there, we will go to the Silver Torii Gate at the opposite side. It's time to start walking back to the house.
The Japanese Gardens is nice, and I think a few years ago they put up the metal structures and the benches and stuff to try and give it a wee bit of spruce, but I don't know. I don't think they want to spend money on the area, to be honest with you.
Mind your footing here. Be careful not to slip on this wee bridge.
As a boy, I always thought it was weird to have a Japanese garden in this area. The new metal arches which they have at either side have been replaced recently, but there were kind of wooden ones, I remember, which may have been there for centuries. It was always kind of fairly well maintained when I was a boy, and I suppose I did appreciate that there was whole with the different plant varieties in here which I had never seen before. During the kind of autumn kind of period, all the leaves on a lot of the trees change colours. Quite striking, really beautiful at that time of year. No, it's fun childhood memories coming back to me now. It's lovely.
We'll finish right where we started. Let's turn left and go back to the house.
To me, it's better from ordinary people's viewpoint. They've got a lovely estate, they can walk there at their leisure, whereas in my grandfather's lifetime they weren't allowed there. It's just weren't it? Or maybe if they were allowed there, it would be special occasions. You know what I mean? Like, one of mine was a bowler, and I think there's a picture of him playing bowls on the lawns up there. So obviously they allowed them sometimes in there, but by and large, no. That's what I've taken out of it. Now people are free to wander the whole estate, apart from getting into folks' houses, obviously. It's a nice estate, and if, as I say, you get a lot of people just go down there for a drink and vandalise it.
Just look after your surroundings and appreciate what's on your doorstep, because we're lucky to live where we live in such a beautiful area. Even though some people look at the high rises and think it's a shithole, man, but we're surrounded by beauty, man. And the Barnsford Nature Reserve it's been part of my life for 35 years, and it'll be part of my life until I die, and my kids absolutely adore it. Aye, just look after your area, man. Stop being lazy, stop dropping litter, and stop being arseholes, and just appreciate where you live and your surroundings.
Because I used to think, wow, I've got access to this. That's actually the words I would use. It's just, there's a wildness about it. And I'm here, and I'm able to experience this.
If other countries had this kind of thing on their doorstep, it wouldn't be left like this. It would be utilised. It would be kept alive. So it is going to evolve Just hope it doesn't lose its character. Especially now with mental health being such a big in the spotlight for people's life. Somewhere like this is brilliant. You would miss this. Just 2 miles down the road you wouldn't have this. So it would be nice if it evolved to more people want to come in and enjoy something like that and just sit and soak it in.
Well, here we are. We've come full circle. And I'd like to think this place has came full circle too. A place that was once only for the select few is once more freely accessible to everyone in this town. And as a town, as a community, we all have our individual forms of solace. Some find it in a church, some find it in a library, some find it in a pub. But we can all find a piece of solace here. And who knows how long these trees will stand or how long this house will last. But I'd like to think our collective appreciation for this place will keep it going for a lot more generations to come. And speaking of that collective appreciation, I'd like to thank everyone who gave me their time and who gave this walk their voice, their words, their knowledge, and an insight into their Dalzell Estate, our Dalzell Estate. Thank you for talking with me, and thank you for walking with me. And I hope we can all enjoy this beautiful part of our town for many years to come.